The story begins with the reincarnation of the once most powerful king in existence. A man who once possessed enough power to bring entire countries to ruin suddenly finds himself reborn as a newborn baby in a simple household. Although he retains all the memories from his previous life, Arthur quickly realizes that being a baby is far from enjoyable. After spending his past life conquering kingdoms and standing at the top of the world, he never expected to become a helpless infant who can't even control his own body. At first, Arthur believes this might all be some strange dream. But as time passes, he comes to accept his new reality. He also notices that his new parents genuinely care about him, something he never truly experienced in his previous life. However, what captures his attention the most is the mysterious power his parents use. Fascinated by this unfamiliar energy, Arthur begins learning everything he can about the world around him. He also notices that ordinary people are allowed to carry weapons, making him realize this world is far more dangerous than it appears. Because of that, he decides to obtain power as quickly as possible. After learning how to crawl, Arthur starts sneaking into the family library whenever his mother, Alice, is busy with household chores. Since he believes knowledge is a weapon, he spends his time studying the world he was reborn into. Through his research, he learns that the continent is called Dicathan and is divided into 3 kingdoms: the Darv Kingdom of Dwarves, the Eleanor Kingdom of Elves, and the Sapin Kingdom, the human nation where he currently lives. He also discovers that magic exists in this world and that only a small portion of the population can use it. As Arthur continues studying, he learns that there are 2 types of mages. Augmenters use mana to strengthen their bodies, while conjurers project mana outward and manipulate it freely. Both rely on a mana core, which serves as the foundation of their power. Since Arthur was once a master of controlling ki in his previous life, he immediately becomes interested in mastering mana as well. 2 years later, Arthur has gained much better control of his body. One day, his father, Reynolds, gives him a small stick to practice swordsmanship, much to Alice's annoyance. While watching his father fight, Arthur notices mana enhancing Reynolds' strength and attacks, allowing him to confirm that his father is an augmenter. Wanting to grow stronger as soon as possible, Arthur decides to form a mana core himself. Unfortunately, things don't exactly go according to plan. The moment he attempts it, a massive explosion tears through the house. When his parents rush over, they're shocked to find Arthur floating in midair while surrounded by mana. However, the situation quickly turns dangerous when pieces of the collapsing roof begin falling toward him. Just as Arthur thinks he's about to die for a second time, his parents rush in and save him. Seeing how terrified and relieved they are afterward makes Arthur realize something he never understood in his previous life. For the first time, he experiences the warmth of having a real family, something far more valuable than all the power and victories he once possessed. A few years later, Arthur is seen sparring with his father and easily manages to break Reynolds' wooden sword with his own. Seeing his son's incredible talent, Reynolds can no longer deny that Arthur needs a proper teacher. He tells Alice that Arthur has far too much potential to waste and would benefit greatly from learning under a real mentor. However, Alice isn't thrilled by the idea, as she doesn't want her son leaving home to live in some distant town. Tired of watching his parents argue, Arthur simply suggests that they all go together. Not long after, Arthur is introduced to the Twin Horns, the former adventuring party his parents once belonged to. The members warmly welcome him and introduce themselves. As they begin traveling together in a wooden carriage, Arthur can't help comparing it to the fleets of airplanes and fighter jets from his previous life, making him realize just how primitive transportation in this world really is. The group is heading toward a city known as Xyrus. During one of their breaks, they are attacked by a pack of wolves, but the Twin Horns quickly deal with the threat. Afterwards, Arthur witnesses something interesting when Alice uses her healing magic on Reynolds. From this, he learns that his mother is a rare type of mage known as an emitter. Because healing magic is extremely valuable, using it openly can attract unwanted attention. As a result, the other party members stand guard while she heals Reynolds. Arthur also learns that this rarity is one of the reasons his parents chose to live quietly in the countryside. As the journey continues, Arthur spends his free time training with the party members. During one sparring session, Adam is left completely stunned by Arthur's skill and jokingly asks Reynolds what kind of monstrous training he put the 4-year-old through. Whenever the group stops to rest, the adventurers continue teaching Arthur different combat techniques. In return, Arthur shares some of his own knowledge, even teaching Jasmine how to channel mana into her legs to increase her speed. Before long, he notices that the usually cold and distant Jasmine has started warming up to him. Unfortunately, the peaceful journey doesn't last long. While passing through a mountain cliffside, the group suddenly falls into a bandit ambush. Although the Twin Horns are powerful adventurers, they quickly find themselves overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. During the battle, Reynolds is injured while fighting the bandit leader. Even then, He refuses to let Alice heal him, knowing how dangerous it would be to expose her rare abilities. Instead, he tells Arthur to take Alice and run. The situation becomes even more urgent when Arthur learns that his mother is pregnant. With no other choice, Arthur grabs Alice and flees into the forest. However, before they can escape, a hidden attacker suddenly appears. Without hesitation, Arthur pushes his mother out of harm's way and takes the attack himself. Refusing to go down alone, he drags the attacker with him as both of them tumble off the cliff and plummet toward the forest below. As he falls, Arthur finds himself thinking not about power, glory, or the kingdom he once ruled. Instead, he thinks about his family. For the first time, he realizes just how much they mean to him. And as darkness begins to close in, Arthur can't help feeling sad that he may never get the chance to become a big brother to the sibling he has yet to meet. Arthur regains consciousness inside a cave where he finds himself face to face with a massive knight-like golem. Despite its intimidating appearance, the being calmly feeds him fruit and tends to him. When Arthur asks about his parents, the golem explains that it cannot move from its current location, but it can see far distances. It then reassures him that his parents are still alive and have continued their journey. Hearing this, Arthur breaks down in tears, overwhelmed with relief. He thanks the golem, who introduces itself as Sylvia. Days pass as Arthur recovers inside the cave. His injuries heal, but his desire to return home only grows stronger. However, Sylvia informs him that they are located on the edge of the Elshire forest, a dangerous region filled with wild beasts and outlaws, making immediate travel impossible. With no other choice, Arthur begins training to survive. During his training, Sylvia is surprised to discover that Arthur has already formed a mana core at such a young age. Impressed by his potential, she decides to teach him a powerful technique. However, before she fully begins, she questions him about what he intends to use this power for. At first, Arthur responds coldly, saying he would use it to kill anyone who takes away what he cares about. Sylvia immediately reprimands him and asks the question again. This time, Arthur gives a different answer. He says he wants to use his power to protect those he cares about. Satisfied with his response, Sylvia begins guiding him in the use of mana. But the peaceful training is suddenly interrupted when Sylvia senses a powerful presence approaching. She quickly hides Arthur as another being arrives and attacks her. In response, Sylvia reveals her true form as a white-horned dragon and engages in a fierce battle. However, her opponent proves to be overwhelmingly strong and unleashes a devastating attack. Realizing her limits, Sylvia halts time for a brief moment. In that frozen instant, she gives Arthur a set of mysterious items and apologizes for not being able to send him away sooner, explaining that she wished she had more time with him. Deeply emotional, Arthur calls her grandma, unable to hold back his tears. Using a space rift, Sylvia sends Arthur away. When time resumes, Arthur is transported into the middle of a forest. Arthur suddenly hears a girl's scream echoing through the forest. Instantly, he infuses mana into his legs and leaps through the trees, quickly tracking the source of the sound. When he arrives, he discovers an elf girl being held captive by a group of outlaws who intend to sell her off. Instead of rushing in recklessly, Arthur remembers his promise to Sylvia, that is to protect those he cares about. Calmly, he waits for the right moment and then launches a precise counterattack, taking down the outlaws one by one. However, things become difficult when only their leader remains, an augmenter who overwhelms Arthur in direct combat. Even so, Arthur pushes through and eventually manages to defeat him as well. With the fight over, Arthur rescues the elf girl and prepares to leave. But as he turns to go, she grabs his hand with a pitiful expression, refusing to let him leave her behind. After a moment, Arthur sighs and decides to escort her back to her home first. The next day, they continue traveling together. Along the way, Arthur learns her name, Tessia. After sharing a meal, they resume their journey, but Arthur notices something strange. Despite traveling for a while, he still cannot see the kingdom of Eleanor anywhere in sight. They camp for the night and continue early, the following morning. However, during the journey, Arthur suddenly experiences an intense, unbearable pain erupting from his mana core. The pain comes in waves, leaving him shaken and confused. Eventually, the following day, they finally reach the entrance to Eleanor. The location appears as a glowing light embedded within a massive tree, almost like a gateway. Tessia then stretches out her hand toward Arthur, inviting him to come with her. However, upon entering Eleanor, Arthur is immediately surrounded by elf guards who restrain him and prepare to execute him on the spot. Confused and shocked, Arthur realizes he may have been betrayed. But before anything can happen, Tessia rushes in and confronts the guards, insisting that Arthur is her friend and demanding his release. The situation escalates until Tessia's grandfather arrives. The guards immediately stand down as Arthur learns his identity. Virion Erelith, the former ruler of Eleanor, Virion personally thanks Arthur for saving Tessia, revealing that she is in fact the princess of Eleanor. Arthur is completely stunned by this revelation. Shortly after, Arthur meets Tessia's parents. Her father, the current king of Eleanor, initially wants Arthur arrested, but Tessia once again steps in to defend him. Eventually, she takes Arthur around the kingdom, and he confirms that what he read in books is true. The elves and humans are currently in a fragile state of hostility due to past conflicts. Later, Arthur is brought before Tessia's family again inside the royal castle. He formally introduces himself and explains how he met Tessia and rescued her from slavers. While the royal family is skeptical about his claim of being able to defeat a group of kidnappers at his age, Tessia's defense of him convinces them to accept his story. Arthur then requests permission to return to his family, explaining that he became lost during the bandit attack. However, the king informs him that the teleportation gate connecting Eleanor and the Sapin Kingdom is only open during a tri-racial council held once every 7 years, meaning it will take 5 years before he can go home. As an alternative, the king offers to later send guards to escort him when possible. Meanwhile, Arthur continues to suffer intermittent pain from his mana core. During his stay, he observes Tessia happily spending time with her family, which reminds him deeply of his own parents, leaving him worried about their safety. Virion later decides to test Arthur's combat abilities and is impressed by his talent, ultimately choosing to take him as his apprentice. However, Arthur remains troubled, worried that his parents still don't know he is alive. Virion then suggests there may be a way for them to eventually learn the truth. At that moment, Arthur is struck again by a wave of pain from his mana core. Virion recognizes what is happening and reveals that Arthur has likely inherited a beast will. He warns Arthur that if he refuses to become his apprentice, he will die. The next morning, Tessia wakes Arthur up, informing him that Virion is already waiting for him. Meanwhile, the Elf King is seen trying to advise his father, Virion, against allowing a human like Arthur to remain in Eleanor. But Virion firmly insists, stating that he has taken a personal liking to Arthur and will vouch for him. During their carriage ride, Virion expresses his gratitude to Arthur, explaining that thanks to him, he has finally seen Tessia's natural smile again. He reveals that Tessia, as the sole heir, has always been surrounded by pressure and superficial expectations, causing her to build emotional walls until she met Arthur. Arthur, in turn, begins to feel that Virion is someone he can genuinely trust, especially since he shows gratitude to a child without hesitation if he believes it is right. They eventually arrive at the home of Virion's old friend, an elderly woman named Reincarnation Darkasan. Virion introduces her as a powerful sorcerer with abilities similar in rarity to Alice, and explains that she is willing to help Arthur with his goal. It is soon revealed that Reincarnation is a diviner. She explains that while she cannot fully see everything about Arthur, something about him is completely hidden from her sight. She is still able to glimpse fragments of his past and future. With her help, Arthur is finally able to make contact with his parents. Speaking to them through her ability, he reassures them that he is alive and currently safe in Eleanor, promising that once everything is settled, he will return to them. His parents, overwhelmed with relief, are overjoyed to finally hear his voice. Arthur himself is also relieved, and with his worries eased, he formally agrees to become Virion's apprentice. Later, Tessia's parents apologize to Arthur for their earlier hostility, admitting it stemmed from the fact that he is human. Arthur already understands that the Elf King is soft toward Tessia and struggles to oppose Virion's decisions, which explains their shifting attitude. Afterward, Tessia takes Arthur out to play, where they encounter a group of elf children around their age. Among them is a boy named Faerith, who openly shows hostility toward Arthur simply because he is human. He challenges Arthur to a duel and asks Tessia to officiate, while the surrounding elves quickly grow interested in the confrontation. Arthur calmly accepts the challenge. As soon as the duel begins, it ends almost instantly. Faerith is knocked out with a single punch from Arthur. The next day, Arthur officially begins his training under Virion. Reflecting on everything he has endured so far, he acknowledges that while he has faced countless trials and continues to grow stronger, one thing remains certain in his mind. No matter what comes next, the future ahead of him will be nothing short of exciting. Tessia and Arthur are seen sparring as Virion hands them wooden swords, thinking that they are ready for the next stage of training. While Tessia collapses on the ground panting, Arthur listens as Virion begins a lecture on sorcery. He explains that elemental affinities are often tied to race. Elves are naturally strong in wind, water, and earth. Dwarves specialize in earth and fire, while humans can theoretically use all 4 elements. However, most humans are only compatible with a single element, with rare individuals capable of more. Arthur, however, is unable to properly use sorcery during training. Virion reveals the reason. A beast is slumbering within his mana core, and its beast will is disrupting the balance between his body and mana, causing the pain Arthur experiences. It is also explained that elves typically awaken their mana cores at age 10, but Tessia, being exceptionally gifted, did so at 9. She has been steadily training alongside Arthur ever since. Virion then attempts to forcibly activate Arthur's beast will in order to stabilize it and possibly turn him into a beast tamer. However, when he triggers Arthur's mana core, a massive surge of energy erupts, blasting both Tessia and Virion backward as Arthur collapses. He wakes up later in the evening, where Virion informs him that the beast inside his core originates from a dragon. He warns Arthur to keep this information hidden from everyone. Virion then reveals an important change of plans. Arthur's departure is moved up from 2 years to just 4 months due to an upcoming cultural exchange between the three kingdoms, where young representatives will gather in Cyrus City. That night, the egg Sylvia left behind suddenly hatches, revealing a small dragon. As it bonds with Arthur, a glowing mark appears on his hand, and he names the dragon Sylvie in honor of Sylvia. The next day, Tessia meets Sylvie and is immediately charmed by how adorable she is. Days pass as Arthur continues training and gradually begins to master the beast will. During a visit to the capital with Tessia, they encounter Firith and his friends again. Firith challenges Arthur to another duel but is effortlessly defeated once more. This time, however, he accepts the defeat and even becomes friendly with Arthur and the others. Later, Arthur learns that Tessia will not be attending the cultural exchange. That night, he visits her, and the two sneak out into the woods to talk, though Tessia eventually falls asleep under the night sky. Finally, the day of the cultural exchange arrives. Virion gives Arthur the family seal as a way to call for help if he ever returns to Eleanor. As Arthur prepares to leave, Tessia rushes over to see him off, and the two share an emotional embrace, promising that they will miss each other. Arthur is finally reunited with his parents and his newborn little sister, Eleanor. After returning home, he recounts everything that happened during his journey, carefully leaving out key details, especially his encounter with Sylvia. Although he feels uneasy hiding the truth, he decides that revealing it might create unnecessary danger. Instead, he introduces Sylvie as a mana beast he discovered during his travels. He then learns that his father, Reynolds, has taken a new job at the Helia auction house as an instructor for the security team. Reynolds also reveals that 2 years ago, he reached the deep orange stage in his mana core development. However, he is shocked when he discovers that Arthur has already reached the light orange stage, meaning his son is nearly on par with him in magical progression. Shortly after, the head of the Helia auction house arrives with his family after hearing of Arthur's return. Arthur politely greets them and is introduced to their daughter, Lilia, who immediately becomes fascinated with Sylvie and wants to play with her. Later, Arthur spars with his father in front of everyone. The match quickly escalates as both begin using fire magic. Arthur takes it further by combining advanced fire techniques with water elemental magic, completely overwhelming Reynolds and shocking everyone present with his extraordinary talent. Impressed, Mr. Helia suggests that Arthur enroll in Xeris Academy, the most prestigious magic academy in the kingdom. He and his wife even offer to sponsor Arthur's tuition. However, Alice becomes worried, reminding them that Arthur is still only 8 years old. Mr. Helia reassures her, claiming he has connections with the academy's director. Arthur quietly excuses himself from the discussion, saying he simply wants to spend more time with his family after being away for so long. Lilia later takes him to the kitchen, where he meets the household maids and servants, all of whom treat him kindly. During the conversation, Arthur learns that Lilia's parents are deeply focused on her awakening her mana core, since they are not sorcerers themselves. The next day, Arthur is reunited with his parents' old adventuring party members. The reunion is emotional, as they are relieved and overjoyed to see that he is safe and well after everything he has endured. Arthur is later seen experimenting with Time Stop, managing to hold it for only a few seconds before it collapses. Afterward, he bathes Sylvie and is then taken out by Alice and Mrs. Helia along with Eleanor and Lilia to get properly dressed and groomed. Once cleaned up, Arthur appears noticeably more refined, leaving everyone impressed as they walk through the marketplace together. While exploring, Arthur suddenly senses something unusual and discovers a shop selling beast cores, rare items that can enhance a user's mana abilities. He quickly realizes that Lilia is interested in buying one, hoping it will help her awaken her mana core, but her mother firmly refuses. Despite this, Lilia secretly goes to the beast core shop again, intending to buy one herself. Arthur tries to advise her against it, but she stubbornly insists. In that moment, Arthur realizes her determination is fueled by pressure she feels from his own presence and abilities. Things escalate when Lilia accidentally bumps into a group of Cyrus Academy students who immediately attempt to bully her. Arthur prepares to step in, but Mrs. Helstay quickly intervenes after recognizing their identities and reminds them of the Helstay family's influence as major donors to the academy. Later at home, Lilia breaks down emotionally, confronting her father and accusing him of favoring Arthur for Xyrus Academy instead of her, since she has not awakened her mana core. In her frustration, she claims she hates them for it. Arthur later visits her to apologize, and Lilia in turn admits she is simply jealous of him. Arthur calmly comforts her and asks if she truly wants to be able to use magic. Meanwhile, Lilia's parents are told that she has run off to try learning magic elsewhere. Her father immediately blames himself, realizing he unintentionally placed too much pressure on her. However, it is soon revealed that Lilia never actually left. She overheard her father's heartfelt confession, where he admits she doesn't need to become a sorcerer as long as she is happy. Despite this, Lilia insists that she still wants to become a sorcerer. Arthur then offers to help her and even includes Eleanor in the process of awakening their mana cores. Under his guidance, Lilia successfully begins to sense her mana for the first time, leading to a joyful celebration with food and drinks shared among everyone. Arthur encourages her to keep practicing, while Lilia excitedly wonders what element she might eventually awaken. Arthur is left in awe as he arrives at the magnificent Helstia auction house, which resembles a grand castle. During the event, Mr. Helstia introduces the guest of honor, the royal family, including the king himself. Arthur notices the crowd's overwhelming cheers, realizing just how popular the monarchy is. The auction then officially begins as the Helstay 10th anniversary event is announced. As the auction progresses, Arthur notices Sylvia is missing and quietly leaves to search for her. He soon finds a royal-affiliated conjurer with Sylvia, mistakenly believing she is part of the auction. Arthur demands Sylvia back, but the conjurer casually dismisses him. When Arthur attempts to leave, the conjurer threatens him, warning that his family will suffer consequences if he refuses to hand Sylvia over. Fury takes over Arthur, and he releases a terrifying burst of bloodlust that engulfs the entire auction hall, shocking everyone present. Realizing he has lost control of his emotions, Arthur quickly suppresses the aura, but the damage is already done. The situation escalates further when the conjurer reveals his intent to present Sylvia to the king. Arthur refuses outright and boldly questions what price the king would accept in exchange for his own children. Enraged by his disrespect, the royal guards attack him, but Arthur effortlessly neutralizes them. The conjurer then joins the fight, but Arthur counters by briefly activating Time Stop, freezing him in place long enough to instill pure fear. However, the technique ends quickly, and the strain causes Arthur to collapse from exhaustion. Arthur later wakes up at home, where Alice is relieved to see he is safe. While returning from the market with his mother, Arthur is approached by a representative of the king, who delivers compensation for the incident at the auction. He explains that the guards involved have been dismissed and the conjurer has been stripped of his position. Arthur's father accepts the compensation on his behalf, and Arthur expresses gratitude. Later, Arthur follows a strange bird-like presence that seems to be watching him. This leads him to an encounter with an elderly female mage who calmly states that she has been waiting for him. Xyrus Academy is known across the kingdom for producing scholars, entrepreneurs, royal guards, military officers, and influential public figures. It is the most prestigious magic academy in the land, where every child aspiring to master magic dreams of studying. It is here that Arthur meets the academy director herself, the highest authority of the institution, who has come to personally evaluate him based on Mr. Helstia's recommendation. To test him, she launches a barrage of elemental attacks, but Arthur easily repels them. Though she admits she may have underestimated his abilities, she acknowledges his remarkable skill in both sorcery and combat. She then unleashes a terrifying sound wave warning him not to lose consciousness. Arthur surprisingly withstands it, further impressing her. Realizing his potential, the director understands Arthur has a request. He tells her he needs the influence and authority of the academy to protect his family. In return, he promises to enroll and become her student, pledging his loyalty and respect. However, he adds one condition: he will not enroll immediately. He wants to attend at the same age as other children, 3 years later, so he can first experience life and travel the world as an adventurer. The director agrees on the condition that he convinces his family. At home, Arthur's mother initially refuses, worried about him leaving so soon. Arthur reassures her that he will return often, and that he simply wants to understand more about the world of Dicathan. His father then suggests they allow someone they trust to accompany him. Jasmine steps forward and surprisingly volunteers, shocking everyone due to her usual preference for working alone. However, given her combat ability, she is considered the best choice. Later, Arthur visits the Helstia auction house to choose a weapon. Among the vast collection, he discovers a seemingly inconspicuous sword that requires mana activation to unsheath and adjusts itself to the user's strength. He successfully draws it, immediately recognizing its uniqueness. However, when his father and Mr. Helstea arrive, Arthur quickly switches to selecting a normal sword, pretending it was his choice, while secretly keeping the special weapon that resembles a staff when sheathed. He even acts cute to Mr. Helstea to ensure he can keep it. Time passes, and Arthur turns 9 years old. His birthday is celebrated warmly by his family and friends, who give him useful gifts for his upcoming journey. He is deeply moved by how much everyone cares for him. After saying his farewells, Arthur leaves home and is met outside by Jasmine, who asks if he is ready. Arthur and Jasmine arrive at the Xyrus branch of the Adventurers Guild, where Jasmine immediately informs the receptionist that Arthur is here for a rank assessment. Arthur is seen wearing a mask and introduces himself under the alias Note. The receptionist then escorts them to meet the guild chief, Caspian Bladeheart. Upon meeting, Arthur shakes hands with Caspian and immediately senses his overwhelming strength. Caspian also takes interest in the boy but says nothing unusual, simply observing him carefully. They are taken to the exam hall where other participants are already present. One of them, Elijah Knight, has already achieved B rank status without even taking the official exam. Another participant, Lucas Wyke, displays strong magical ability but lacks control. When the examiner attempts to assign him a rank, Lucas tries a sneak attack in protest, but Arthur effortlessly intervenes and stops him. Despite the incident, Lucas is still granted a B rank. Soon, it is Arthur's turn. Even the examiners are unnerved by the pressure of his aura, forcing Caspian to personally step in as examiner. As an AA-ranked adventurer, Caspian oversees Arthur's evaluation directly. After the assessment, Arthur is also assigned a B rank. Later, the examiners question Caspian about awarding 3 young candidates B rank in a single day. Caspian explains that during the cultural exchange 6 months earlier, the king lifted restrictions between races. This reveals that Lucas is a half-elf. Elijah is a representative from the dwarf kingdom, and Arthur, known as Note, remains an unknown entity with no background records. The only confirmed detail is that he has a guarantor, Jasmine of the Flamesworth family, known for their powerful fire magic lineage. Caspian further admits that while Arthur's swordsmanship is impressive, his movements still resemble that of a child. After the evaluation, Jasmine takes Arthur to a beast pasture, a designated training ground for low-rank adventurers. There, they encounter a massive bull-type monster so dangerous that even Jasmine becomes alert. However, Arthur draws his special sword and unleashes a series of flaming slashes, instantly and cleanly defeating the beast. Later, Arthur learns more about Jasmine's past. She reveals that she became an adventurer to escape her family, who labeled her a failure for lacking fire magic talent, despite awakening her mana core faster than all her siblings. Meanwhile, Tessia is seen observing Arthur through an image orb. Watching his progress leaves her feeling jealous and restless. Noticing this, Virion gives her a book, encouraging her to focus on her own growth and accept her own challenge as well. The next day, Jasmine informs Arthur that they have another quest to complete. Sylvia decides she will be training somewhere nearby while Arthur and Jasmine head out to handle the mission. However, on their way, they notice a group of abandoned-looking houses with no sign of people living there. As they investigate, they come across a girl who is about to be attacked by an Arachnne. They rush in to help, but before they can react properly, the beast already places the girl under its spell. Jasmine quickly warns Arthur that Arachne are beasts she does not always want to fight, and seeing the situation is beyond their current strength, they decide to retreat and report back to the guild. But before they can leave, they realize too late that the Arachne is already behind them. In an instant, it casts its spell on Jasmine as well, leaving Arthur completely alone. Now, he's the only one left to decide what to do. With no other choice, Arthur steps forward and chooses to face the beast head-on. As he fights, he recalls all the teachings Jasmine has given him over time. Pushing through with his magic resistance and sword skills, he eventually manages to defeat the Arachne. Thankfully, both Jasmine and the girl are freed from the spell, leaving Arthur relieved. Although Jasmine is not happy that Arthur chose to fight, she scolds him for ignoring her instruction to report back to the guild. Still, she thanks him for saving her life. Arthur understands her concern, but deep down he knows he had to act. He reflects on his past, remembering how his inability to protect his family once separated him from them, and he refuses to let that happen again. They return to the guild and report the incident, but Lucas doubts Arthur's story, until he sees the head of the defeated Arachne, finally believing that Arthur truly took it down, fully aware he is no match for such a beast. Later, Arthur and Jasmine also report the situation to Arthur's parents. Alice scolds Jasmine heavily for not properly looking after Arthur, especially knowing how dangerous Arachne are among the 5 powerful beasts, fearing her son could have been killed. Jasmine takes full responsibility, even though Arthur clarifies he was the one who chose to proceed. After everything settles, they continue training, and once done, Arthur finds himself thinking about Tessia, wondering what she might be doing at that moment. Tessia is seen at a bar with her team as they discuss their next mission. She informs them that their next target is a wild boar hunt. Meanwhile, a group of men keeps watching them from across the bar. As Tessia and her team prepare to leave, one of the men attempts to stop her at the exit. To everyone's surprise, Tessia swiftly kicks him down and makes sure he does not cause any more trouble before leaving with her team. Back at the guild, Lucas approaches Elijah and asks why he is connected to the dwarf royal family. Wondering if he is actually a dwarf himself, Elijah explains that the story is complicated and then questions why Lucas belongs to the Wykes family despite being an elf. At that moment, Arthur overhears their conversation and explains that the Wykes family values elves because of their exceptional mana control. Lucas is clearly upset by Arthur's interference and questions why he had to interrupt, but Arthur reveals that he only stepped in because he does not want Elijah to feel pressured or bullied. Elsewhere, Tessia and her team head out in search of a wild boar. They ask several people along the way for information, but no one seems to know where they can find one. After searching for some time, they finally encounter a wild boar. Although the battle proves difficult and the team struggles to take it down quickly, Tessia eventually manages to defeat the beast. Back home, Lord Virion is already proud of Tessia's progress and everything she has accomplished so far. Tessia is equally happy with how much she has improved. As she and her team prepare to leave, one of her companions suggests that she visit Arthur before departing. However, Tessia is both surprised and slightly jealous when she learns that her teammates already know Arthur and have even visited his family before she did. Determined to see him, she heads to his house, only to find his mother and sister instead. Feeling shy and unable to speak comfortably with them, Tessia grows frustrated as she wonders where Arthur could be. Arthur, Elijah, and Lucas make plans to head into the forest to search for something to hunt. Meanwhile, Jasmine is not with Arthur at the time, as she has just left Reynolds' house. Upon arriving at the forest, she immediately begins searching for Arthur, growing increasingly worried as she wonders where he could be. During her search, Jasmine encounters several guards who turn out to be members of the Wykes family's security detail. They reveal that they are also looking for Lucas, who appears to have slipped away from them. Jasmine continues her search, and before long, Sylvie finds her. Seeing Sylvie reassures Jasmine that Arthur is still safe, and the two begin searching for him together. Meanwhile, Arthur, Elijah, and Lucas discuss what they want to hunt. Elijah suggests catching fish, while Lucas declares that he wants to hunt a mana beast. He even shows them a picture of the creature he is looking for. Initially, Lucas intends to hunt it alone, but Arthur insists on accompanying him. Despite accepting their help, Lucas arrogantly warns them not to interfere once the fight begins. The trio eventually arrives at the creature's hiding spot, and Lucas uses his magic to force the mana beast out into the open. However, the beast is far larger than he anticipated, causing him to panic. Fortunately, Arthur is there to step in. He charges forward to face the creature while Lucas and Elijah provide support from behind. After launching several coordinated attacks, they believe they have finally defeated the mana beast and begin celebrating their victory. However, their relief is short-lived when the creature suddenly rises back to its feet. Already exhausted, Arthur wonders how much longer he can hold out, but he remains confident that Jasmine will eventually find him and help turn the battle around. Just as Arthur prepares to fight once more, the mana beast is suddenly sliced cleanly in half. When they look closer, they realize that Jasmine has arrived. Relieved to see Arthur unharmed, she rushes to his side. Arthur thanks her for saving him, but Jasmine reminds him that they are a team and protecting one another is only natural. In the aftermath of the battle, Arthur completely forgets about the beast's mana core. By the time Lucas and Elijah point it out, Sylvie has already begun devouring it, leaving them with no choice but to watch. Elsewhere, Tessia continues thinking about Arthur and decides to gather the courage to visit his home. Hoping to ask his parents where he is, she approaches the front door. However, just as she reaches the entrance, Reynolds notices her and offers to help. Overwhelmed by shyness, Tessia panics and runs away before she can say a word. AA rank adventurer Brauld approaches Jasmine with an offer to join him on a special quest. He explains that he is currently looking for skilled adventurers to add to his team, but Jasmine does not give him an immediate answer. Instead, she decides to gather more information and speaks with Reynolds after Arthur finishes his magic training session with Adam. When Jasmine asks about Brauld, Reynolds confirms that he is a well-known adventurer with a reputation for successfully clearing difficult quests alongside his team. However, he also mentions that Brauld often takes dangerous risks and sometimes acts recklessly on his own. Jasmine finds it suspicious that Brauld is recruiting new members despite already having an established team. Reynolds suggests that internal conflicts among his teammates may be the reason he is searching for additional adventurers. Meanwhile, Lucas's guards encourage him to take on more beast-related quests to improve his experience. However, his recent encounter with the Mana Beast alongside Arthur and Elijah leaves him hesitant, causing him to reject the idea outright. At that moment, Xiun, one of his father's subordinates, introduces Lucas to the special quest Brauld is organizing and suggests that he join the expedition. Intrigued by the opportunity, Lucas quickly accepts the idea despite his guards warning him about the dangers involved. Ignoring their concerns, he remains determined to participate. Elsewhere, Tessia sits with her team when she suddenly notices Arthur passing by in a carriage. Although she has been searching for him for quite some time, she is too shy to call out to him. Instead, she hides her face to avoid being seen. Later, Arthur asks Jasmine whether she has made a decision regarding Brauld's invitation. Jasmine admits that she is reluctant to accept because her investigation reveals that Brauld's usual teammates will not be participating in the quest. Despite knowing from his previous life that unnecessary risks should be avoided, Arthur still wants to join the expedition. Realizing that she cannot change his mind, Jasmine decides to accompany him. Before their departure, Arthur's parents wish them good luck and pray for their safe return. As they set off on their journey, Arthur and Jasmine leave Sylvia behind in the forest so she can continue her training and find food on her own while they focus on the mission ahead. Arthur and Jasmine eventually meet up with the rest of the adventurers Brauld has recruited for the special quest, including Elijah and Lucas. As everyone introduces themselves, it becomes clear that Jasmine is the second AA rank adventurer in the party, with only Brauld ranking above her. Brauld explains that their mission is to retrieve a valuable magic stone hidden deep within a cave. Excited by the potential reward, the group begins discussing how they plan to spend their share of the profits once the magic stone is sold. Confident in the mission, Brauld assures everyone that he has already surveyed the cave and confirmed that it is free of monsters. However, shortly after entering, the group is suddenly surrounded by a swarm of bat runners. Fortunately, Lucas quickly uses his magic to eliminate the creatures, allowing the party to continue deeper into the cave. Not long afterward, the group reaches a dead end with a steep drop blocking their path. Brauld asks Elijah to use his magic to create a staircase, and Elijah successfully forms a safe route forward. Despite maintaining a calm exterior, Brauld begins to grow uneasy. The person who informed him about the quest never mentioned any obstacles or dangers inside the cave. Even so, he warns everyone to conserve their mana since they have no idea what lies ahead. As they continue onward, the party encounters a series of traps hidden throughout the cave. The discovery immediately raises suspicions among the group, as Brauld had insisted that the cave was completely safe. Although Brauld admits that he is just as confused, trust in his leadership begins to fade. One of the adventurers, Oliver, decides that he no longer wants to follow Brauld and attempts to leave on his own. However, the moment he triggers a trap, his body rapidly dries up until he is reduced to nothing but a skeleton. Thankfully, Lucas reacts in time and casts a defensive spell that protects the rest of the group. At that moment, everyone realizes that the mission is far more dangerous than they were led to believe. Before they can recover from the shock, a group of monsters suddenly attacks. Overwhelmed by fear, Lucas freezes and becomes unable to cast his magic, forcing Brauld to step in. During the battle, Brauld loses one of his arms while protecting the team. Shaken by the incident, Lucas blames Brauld for everything that has happened. With no other choice, Brauld finally confesses that he has never actually been inside the cave before. The revelation shocks the entire group. Although Arthur had already suspected that something was wrong, stepping forward, Arthur calms everyone down and asks the team to decide what they should do next. Despite everything that has happened, Brauld insists that turning back may no longer be possible and urges everyone to keep moving forward. Recognizing Arthur's composure and leadership abilities, Brauld appoints him as the new leader of the expedition. With his injury making it impossible for him to continue leading effectively, he places his trust in Arthur, who accepts the responsibility. Just then, the sealed passage at the far end of the cave suddenly opens on its own, leaving the entire group stunned. After getting out of the cave, Arthur instantly senses that something is wrong, as the entire area is covered in a thick mist. Seeing the strange situation, he suggests that they stop searching for the magic stone and instead focus on finding a way back. However, everyone disagrees with him, arguing that they cannot turn back after coming so far. Determined to continue, they press onward in search of the magic stone. Before long, the group begins falling victim to strange illusions. Creon, one of the A-rank adventurers, suddenly believes that he has found his fiancée and starts heading deeper toward the source of the mist. Although the others repeatedly call out to him, he completely ignores them. Soon after, Brauld also falls under the effects of the illusion, causing the team's coordination to gradually break apart. Fortunately, Samantha, the second female member of the group, helps prevent the others from succumbing to the illusions, while Jasmine clears a path through the mist so they can discover what is really happening. That is when they finally realize that an S-rank beast is lurking nearby and has been releasing the mist all along, causing everyone to hallucinate. By the time they find it, the creature has already taken both Creon and Brauld hostage. For Jasmine, this is the first time she sees the beast in person, having only seen pictures of it before. Before the group can even come up with a strategy, Brauld recklessly charges forward, believing he can defeat the monster by himself. However, he is instantly sent flying by the beast. Witnessing this, Jasmine urges Arthur to abandon the others and find a way back home, reminding him that she promised his parents that she would protect him. Nevertheless, Arthur refuses to leave anyone behind and decides to confront the beast alongside the others. Before long, both Arthur and Jasmine suffer injuries, and Lucas suddenly undergoes a drastic change. He begins attacking his own companions, claiming that he alone must survive. Even after he attacks Elijah and the latter becomes trapped by the beast, Brauld unexpectedly sacrifices himself, allowing the monster to focus on him instead and spare Elijah. Realizing that the situation is only getting worse, Arthur concludes that he has no choice but to rely on Lord Virian's power. As he unleashes the attack against the beast, the creature is finally defeated. Witnessing the overwhelming power Arthur displays, even Elijah cannot help but wonder who Arthur truly is, as he never imagined that Arthur possessed such incredible strength. Lucas manages to make it out alive and reports to his guards that his entire team has been wiped out, claiming that he is the only survivor. Meanwhile, Arthur eventually regains consciousness and finds himself inside a cave alongside Elijah. Realizing that Elijah must have saved him after he collapses from defeating the S-rank beast, Arthur thanks him, knowing that Elijah could have simply abandoned him and escaped on his own. He then asks about Jasmine, and Elijah points him toward where she is lying unconscious. Seeing that her condition is still poor, Arthur gives Elijah one of his gems and asks him to use it to heal Jasmine. After some time, she finally recovers and immediately apologizes to Arthur for failing to protect him once again. However, Arthur blames himself instead, believing that none of this would have happened if he had not convinced her to join the quest in the first place, despite her initial reluctance. In his eyes, everyone has to suffer through those hardships because of him. Afterward, the group begins searching for a way out of the dungeon. Arthur first asks Elijah about the others, only to learn that he is able to rescue Samantha as well and has been keeping her inside another cave due to her poor condition. The three of them set out to find her, with Elijah using his power to track down her location. Once they reunite with her, Jasmine carries Samantha, and the group resumes their journey to escape the dungeon. However, every route they attempt to use ends up leading nowhere. At one point, they are swept away by an underground current and desperately cling to one another to avoid drowning. Fortunately, Sylvia arrives just in time in her dragon form and rescues them. Even Arthur is surprised by how much she has grown, while Elijah can only wonder how Arthur is able to have a dragon as a companion. The group then climbs onto Sylvie's back, and she safely transports them back to the forest. Although she could easily take them all the way back to town, Arthur knows that such a sight would attract too much attention. Before leaving, Samantha remembers to hand Arthur the mana core she obtains from the beast they defeat. Everyone agrees that Arthur alone deserves it, since he is the one who saves their lives. From there, they decide to head back to the guild. But before that, Arthur contacts his parents to let them know that he is safe. Hearing his voice immediately puts them at ease. Upon returning to the guild, Arthur receives treatment for his injuries. However, after recovering, he learns that an official report concerning the expedition has already been filed, and according to it, he is responsible for the disaster that befalls the team. Deep down, Arthur immediately realizes that Lucas is the one behind the accusation. Afterward, Arthur secretly meets with Caspian to discuss what Lucas's family might be capable of doing during the hearing that is set to determine the punishments for both him and Lucas. Caspian asks him to explain everything that happens during the expedition, and Arthur gives him the full details. Knowing that the Wykes family might try to manipulate the situation in their favor, Arthur decides to seek Caspian's assistance. Meanwhile, Lucas has already ordered his guards to eliminate Elijah, since he never expects Elijah and Arthur to make it out of the cave alive. Seeing them alive only fills him with anger and jealousy. Fortunately, when the guards attempt to attack Elijah, they suddenly find their bodies becoming unbearably heavy. Even then, Lucas continues to pressure them into carrying out his orders, until something suddenly slices past his ear. Looking back in shock, he discovers that Arthur is the one who throws the knife. The sight immediately terrifies Lucas and forces both him and his men to back off from Elijah. However, Caspian later warns Arthur about the consequences that could come from provoking Lucas. Not long after, the hearing is finally held. Lucas receives his punishment, though everyone knows that his family's influence will prevent it from having any real effect. Arthur also receives punishment for his actions. Still dissatisfied, Lucas demands that Arthur's true identity be revealed, but the others firmly refuse. This only frustrates Lucas even more, as he is tired of seeing Arthur hide behind a mask and desperately wants to know more about his family and background. Following the meeting, Arthur, Jasmine, and Elijah prepare to leave town. Arthur offers Elijah a place to stay until he can eventually settle down on his own. Along the way, Arthur asks Jasmine to take Elijah ahead while he takes care of some unfinished business. He then meets with Caspian once more and thanks him for protecting his identity during the hearing. In return, Arthur promises that he will support both Caspian and his guild with his strength in the future. Afterward, Arthur finally returns home, where everyone is overjoyed to see him safe and sound once again. He then offers his father the mana core they obtained from the beast he defeats, knowing that his father has been unable to advance any further since Arthur leaves home. Believing that the mana core will help him grow stronger, Arthur insists on giving it to him. Although his father initially refuses to accept such a valuable gift, Arthur ultimately forces him to take it. The next day, Arthur heads out with Elijah, intending to check out the quests currently available. However, Elijah still has some personal matters to take care of first, so the two decide to handle those before anything else. Meanwhile, Jasmine is spending time with her colleague, who suggests that they go on a quest together. However, Jasmine asks her to wait a little longer, explaining that she still has something important to do before leaving. Her colleague agrees and decides to give her some time. Eventually, Arthur and Jasmine face each other once again for another sparring session. Even now, Arthur is still surprised that he has never been able to defeat Jasmine despite all the times they have trained together. Realizing that swordsmanship alone is not enough to overcome her, he decides to incorporate magic into the fight. Jasmine readily accepts, and the two begin exchanging both sword techniques and magical attacks. Witnessing Arthur's impressive control over mana, his father cannot help but be amazed. Even Jasmine's colleague admits that Arthur is destined to become a terrifying existence in the future, considering how much power he can already unleash at such a young age. Despite that, Arthur realizes that Jasmine continues to read through all of his attacks with ease. At that moment, he begins to reflect on everything she teaches him over the years. He realizes that Jasmine does not merely teach him how to wield a sword, but how to survive. More importantly, she gives him the strength and determination to always return safely to the people he cares about. With those thoughts in mind, the real battle finally begins. Arthur starts putting everything Jasmine teaches him into practice, using every lesson on survival and combat she passes down to him. Through this fight, he wants to prove that he is finally capable of living his own life without relying on her anymore, and that all of her teachings have not been in vain. By the end of their match, even Jasmine admits that Arthur has truly become much stronger. The following day, as Jasmine and her colleague prepare to depart, Arthur presents her with the dimensional ring he obtains as a token of appreciation for all the training and guidance she provides him throughout the years. Afterward, the two bid each other farewell. Later that night, Elijah asks Arthur about the revenge he plans to take against Lucas. However, Arthur reveals that he is no longer focused on revenge and instead intends to devote himself to becoming stronger. This surprises Elijah, who knows that Arthur is not the type to give up so easily. The following day, Arthur visits his uncle, Mr. Vincent Helstia, and asks whether he knows any inventors. Vincent tells him about a famous inventor named Gideon and offers to introduce him. Just then, Arthur's father arrives and informs him that after attempting to absorb mana from the mana core Arthur gives him, the core strangely does not crumble. Curious about the reason, Arthur takes the mana core back and begins examining it. It is then that he realizes that the beast will still remains inside the mana core, preventing his father from properly absorbing its mana. Upon discovering this, Arthur immediately thinks of Tessia, knowing that she is the only person who would truly benefit from such a treasure. Later that day, Arthur accompanies his uncle to meet Gideon. There, he offers the inventor some information he possesses in exchange for one item of his choosing. Excited by the proposal, Gideon proudly shows off countless inventions that he creates over the years. However, none of them manage to catch Arthur's interest until Gideon finally presents a unique pendant. The moment he sees it, Arthur immediately decides that it is the one he wants. Afterward, Arthur also brings up the idea of a steam engine. Eventually, the two leave the shop, and Arthur tells his uncle that he plans to give the pendant to his sister. However, Vincent becomes curious about the steam engine Arthur mentions earlier. To avoid raising suspicion, Arthur claims that the idea simply comes to him on a whim, while in reality, it is knowledge he retains from his previous life. On their way home, they happen to run into Elijah, and the three of them begin heading back together. However, before they can get very far, they come across a group of students bullying a young dwarf. Unable to stand by and watch, Elijah steps in to help. Instead of backing down, the students turn their attention toward him. Not wanting to expose his magic and bring trouble upon Arthur, Elijah refrains from fighting back. Eventually, Arthur steps forward and decides to teach the bullies a lesson himself. However, while the fight is still underway, he suddenly senses an overwhelming aura and begins wondering where such a powerful presence is coming from. Meanwhile, as Arthur and Elijah are tending to the dwarf boy, one of the students launches a sneak attack from behind. Before Arthur can react, a mysterious lady suddenly appears and effortlessly saves them. The unexpected sight leaves both Arthur and Elijah completely shocked. The mysterious lady who saves Arthur and the others turns out to be the Princess of Sapin, and she is accompanied by her brother, the Prince of Sapin. Wanting to understand the situation, the prince asks what happens. However, Jamil, the student who is bullying the dwarf boy, falsely claims that he is merely acting in self-defense. Hearing such an obvious lie immediately angers Arthur. At first, the prince is inclined to believe Jamil's story, but Helstia steps forward and explains that the boy is lying. This also angers the prince, prompting him to ask Jamil to introduce himself. However, upon learning that Jamil belongs to the influential Trident family, the prince becomes hesitant. Knowing how much the Trident family contributes to and invests in Cyrus Academy, he decides to let the matter slide. Seeing this, Arthur decides to contact Cynthia, the director of Cyrus Academy. Although everyone doubts that the director would respond to him, they are left speechless when Cynthia immediately answers. Arthur then gives her an ultimatum, demanding that Jamil be expelled from the academy or he himself will refuse to attend. To everyone's astonishment, Cynthia agrees without hesitation, resulting in Jamil's immediate expulsion. The shocking turn of events leaves everyone present stunned. Afterward, the prince personally apologizes to Arthur for misjudging the situation, while Arthur also apologizes for his earlier lack of respect. Soon, the prince and princess return to their carriage. However, just before leaving, the princess asks Arthur if they can have tea together sometime in the future, and Arthur agrees. The following day, a grand ceremony is held at the palace, where 6 representatives are chosen to oversee the various races of the continent. During the event, the public is also informed about the existence of another continent beyond their own. However, the greatest surprise for Arthur is seeing Baron, Lucas's older brother, among the 6 newly appointed lances. This revelation shocks Arthur. He remembers how desperately Lucas fights and competes with everyone around him in hopes of reaching that position one day, only for his own brother, whom he does not consider to be as strong, to achieve that honor instead. Even so, Arthur chooses not to dwell on the matter. Eventually, Eleanor's birthday arrives, and the celebration proceeds smoothly. At one point, Arthur's father invites both Arthur and Eleanor to dance together, despite the fact that they never practiced beforehand. Nevertheless, with the help of his magic, Arthur manages to synchronize their movements perfectly, allowing the 2 siblings to put on an impressive performance. Their mother is especially shocked, knowing full well that they have never rehearsed together. Later, Eleanor begins opening the presents she receives from everyone. Among them, one particular gift box catches her attention. Upon opening it, a letter flies out, and Arthur reads through it, only to discover that the sender chooses to remain anonymous. Inside the box is a beautiful bow, leaving everyone surprised. Instantly, the first person who comes to Arthur's mind is Tessia, as he suspects that she is the one behind the gift. And as it turns out, Arthur is absolutely correct. Tessia is indeed the sender, but out of embarrassment, she intentionally keeps her identity a secret. While the celebration is still ongoing, Gideon arrives to meet Arthur. He explains that with Arthur's extraordinary knowledge and talent, the 2 of them can work together to create even more inventions for the world. In return, Gideon promises to provide Arthur with whatever resources he needs. Hearing the proposal, Arthur readily accepts, marking the beginning of a new partnership. Later, Gideon reveals that he knows everything about Arthur, from the details of his birth to the truth about his parents. He even mentions how Arthur changes his name to Note after joining the guild. Arthur is surprised by how much Gideon knows about him. Gideon then brings up the rumor that Arthur defeats the Elder Woods alone. Unsure if the story is true, he says that is the reason he comes to meet him. Arthur confirms that he does defeat the Elder Woods and points out that Brauld and the others witnessed the battle themselves. However, Gideon reveals that he already knows this and even admits that he is the one who sends Brauld there in the first place. Hearing that causes Arthur to remember Brawld's death during the battle against the Elder Woods. Filled with anger, he vows to make Gideon pay for everything he has done. Although Gideon originally claims that he does not come to fight, he is forced to defend himself once Arthur launches an attack. Using sonic magic to block the assault, Gideon shocks Arthur, who never expects him to possess such an ability. Arthur then accuses Gideon of controlling the beast that nearly kills them. Gideon denies being able to control an S-class monster like the Elder Woods, explaining that his power only works on A-class beasts. However, he admits that he removes the Elder Woods' will, allowing him to reconstruct its instincts and direct its hostility toward Arthur and the others that day. The more Gideon talks about his involvement, the angrier Arthur becomes. He continues his relentless assault, refusing to back down. As Arthur prepares an attack that is about to land successfully, Gideon finally decides to stop holding back. Transforming into a gigantic beast, he unleashes his full strength against Arthur. Elsewhere, Arthur's parents notice the enormous creature from a distance and immediately become worried. When they realize Arthur is nowhere to be found, they question Elijah, but even he has no idea where Arthur is. Meanwhile, a fierce battle erupts between Arthur and Gideon. Before long, Gideon gains the upper hand and overwhelms Arthur. He grabs him with his massive hand and repeatedly slams him into the ground. Exhausted and battered, Arthur begins to lose hope. Even as he worries about the family he cherishes most, he starts believing that this might be where his journey ends. Just when all seems lost, Arthur receives a new source of power. His grandmother finally bestows upon him the strength he needs to overcome his enemy. With renewed determination, Arthur charges forward at full force and unleashes his newfound power. The battle quickly turns in his favor, and he ultimately defeats Gideon. After the fight, Arthur returns home badly wounded. Fortunately, he manages to convince his family with a believable excuse, while the guild helps cover up the truth. As a result, attention shifts away from Arthur being the hero who defeats Gideon and instead focuses on the injuries he supposedly receives during the incident. Once he fully recovers, Arthur returns to the academy. There, the principal gathers the students and makes an important announcement regarding the formation of the student council. Thanks for watching. Check out this next video, and remember to subscribe and zap.